Yeah, I see what you're saying. Okay, so basically what I think Franz is asking is when you look at a file, like it lists just the currently just lists the file name, which I believe is all that it can list in the current settings. But let's just double check this really quickly. I guess a file list would be thumbnail info. Yeah, file list, group activities, don't highlight image files. Let's see here. Just to let everyone know, we haven't started yet. We're going to start soon, but okay, choose friends, to be honest with you, I'm pretty certain key I see. Okay. You can show things like keywords in manage mode. Um like more than thumbnail style, details view. Regardless of whether or not you can or can't do this, I would still need to look into this with like a developer because I've never added any additional information to underneath the file name. So just friends, just reach out to me over Connect and I'll get an answer for you, a more concrete answer. Um, I'm not certain whether or not this is possible. I'd have to look into this, and I would maybe have to ask a developer. Um, oh, I see. Okay, so it is choose thumbnail info. Well, it lists property, but what is described as file properties? Let's see here. IPTC, image attributes, more than the file name. I suppose it maybe has to. So let's just add a ACDSee metadata. Let's just like add a keyword. Or yeah, let's just add a regular keyword and let's see if that thumbnail info. Yeah, it does look like it changes it. Yeah. Okay, interesting. I've never done this before. Yeah, so I'll display that really quickly. I don't know the extent of this, but it looks like you can do this. Wow, figuring it out on the fly here. So where I navigated to, Franz? Oh, I'm not certain about Mac. I'm sorry. I don't do Mac tutorials. Rodrigo does our Mac tutorials. I do workshops on the PC product. Um, I'm not certain to the extent that this is the same options within Mac or if it has a limitation here, but anyway, I guess for anyone's benefit who's using the PC product and wants to add some form of keyword or additional information underneath the thumbnail itself, how I've done that is I've navigated to options and under the file list section, there's a subheading called thumbnail info. And what you can do is you can choose the thumbnail info you want to add. And you also have the ability, if in this case, I can adjust the amount of lines. Pardon me. It looks like on the this value can go up or down depending on how many lines of keyword information I want to add. I'm going to remove this because it's not typically something I use, but in this case, it looks like I have my keywords listed here, and then I have the actual title of the file, which is by default. So in this case, I've listed my keyword information just below the file thumbnail. And it's going to reset those now, and there you go. But yeah, it looks like that is possible in the PC version of the software. Mac, I'm uncertain. I don't know. Sorry. That would be something that we would probably have to do some digging in regards to. So today, I hadn't done one of these workshops in a really long time. I typically try to do them. No problem, Fran. Sorry, I didn't have a more conclusive answer for the Mac product. A lot of the option functionality in Mac is quite similar, so I'd imagine that it'd probably be in Mac, but I can't tell you for certain, unfortunately. Um, and because I use my PC as a tutorial for this, so today what we're going to be talking about is I want to just show like a workflow process in Manage Mode, and I've done this a couple times in the past, but it's not something I've covered in a while. And we're going to go over like broad management tools as well because there's a lot of really useful tools that we'll talk about today, just to give you sort of a breakdown of maybe how we would go about like a typical workflow process, starting with the importing process and kind of here I'll put that a bit closer. There we go. and then moving towards a a process of like actually examining how to catalog our files so that we have a method for searching images based on that catalog information. Okay, so I'm going to collapse this, make this a bit bigger here. There we go. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So, and then I'll hide this. All right. So, let's begin. I think this is a good time to begin. It's 5 minutes past. In ACDSee, typically what we would want to do, many of you will be interacting with a camera that you're importing from. I'm just going to be importing from disk today because I have a series of images that I'd like to import onto my computer here. But right here, I have my, let's see here, my folder structure. We'll go back to it. So this is just my pictures folder on my hard drive here. And I'm going to be adding a folder to this. And so what I mean by that is I'm going to be taking or referencing something from an external drive. So to do this, what we typically do, or when we're adding files to our hard drive, I'm going to be importing from something other than, in this case, it's going to be an external drive or a camera, something like that. ACDSee works a bit differently than other photo editing softwares and photo management softwares in that the importing process is direct to the hard drive. And what I mean by that is ACDSee, as many of you probably already have figured out, ACDSee works directly off of your folder hierarchy rather than importing your images into, say, the program per se, and then working from them from within the program. So there's no process by which we like import these images twice. It's not like you need to bring them onto your computer and then you need to bring them into ACDSee in some capacity. We really are just working directly off the hard drive. So to do this, I would just navigate to import. And then from device, what from device would do is this would typically be your camera that you'd have plugged into your computer, your digital camera, and then you'd be drawing from that. But I'm drawing from disk today. So I'm going to navigate to disk here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to navigate to an external hard drive that I have here. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this photo section. This is the one that I want to bring in. And I'll click on OK. And by doing that, it's going to go bring me through the importing process. And so right here, I have my folders, my images rather. It looks like I have 50 on this in this folder. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to select them all. And as you can see, the little icon pops up dictating that these images have been selected. And what I would like to do is I'd like to choose a new location for these files to end up. I have a past history here, so I have uploaded a series of images of cars, and I don't want to upload to that same location. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to click on Browse, and I'm going to create a new folder. Let's make a new folder here. I don't want it there, though. I want it more on the top level here. So let's click on pictures and then add a new folder to pictures. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to rename this. I'm going to call it landscape 2. And then it's going to rename it. As you can see, actually, in ACDSee, right underneath here, you can see that that's being added. Because, again, this works directly off of our hard drive, so it's sort of impacting it right away. And I'm going to click OK. And then so the location is then going to be that landscape photo folder number 2. And I can place it in a subdirectory if I want within this folder. And I can also add a backup process right now if I wanted to. And I can also rename my files, but I'm going to showcase how to do this in batch rather than to do this now. Oh, that's a good question. Select items to import new. Okay, so in this case, if I had added any photos to the folder itself that had like a different capture date or import date, then the ones that would be listed under new are going to be the ones that are the ones with the most recent capture date, versus all are custom range. All in this case would be the image that has that old capture date as well as the new capture date. It just so happens that the images in this folder are just from the same capture date, basically from the same import date. So what I'm listing here is new is no different from all in this case. They're the same because they were imported at the same time. So that's a good question though. But if you have a folder that you've been interacting with and you've been interacting with it over a duration and you have added new images to that folder on that same date, then I actually don't know if it does. I think what it does is it operates off of the Windows import date. So when you look at a folder in Windows, there is a section here. So if I go to pictures under landscape, just a regular landscape folder, there is a way to list these. Let's see here by date. And so it's probably utilizing this data to draw from. And it's sort of suggesting in this case that, I don't know, these ones on the 9th here in 2025 are going to be more recent than the ones on 2024. So it's drawing from those import date styles. So that's going to be what we're going to pull from. And then from here, what we're going to do is we're going to import these, and it's going to be imported, as I mentioned, to this landscape folder. So we're going to go through the importing process. This might take a moment. One thing to note is that ACDSee has a what we're calling the activity manager now. And so this allows this importing process to be a background process where we can actually continue to edit and engage with images. We can develop images and what have you. And this process is operating in the background. And this is going to be really relevant for when you have more than 50 photos that you're uploading or importing in this case, because 50 is not a lot of photos. It's like it just took that amount of time. But if you're interacting with thousands of photos that you're uploading off of your camera, this is going to be really relevant to you that this queued activity, this can be active in the background while I actually am going through and I'm making edits to certain images or in people mode and adding face data, that sort of thing. The other thing that you're going to notice is that I currently have 2 idle activities that just completed, but it was AI keywords and AI face detection. And so when we import images to ACDSee, one of the process that is completed, if I reset this here, my landscape folder is created. The thumbnails are created for me here. And there's 2 facets that are also detected during this process of importing. The first is AI keywords, which we're going to be talking about later in this workshop. And the second is AI face detection. We won't be talking about that today, but what it is it's searching your images for any faces that are present in the images. So it's looking for people's faces. And then this would also begin the process of recognition as well. So it would begin the process of determining whether or not these faces represent ones that you've previously told ACDSee who the person is in your image. So, for example, if you have your Aunt Linda and you've named your Aunt Linda in previous photos, AI face detection would do the 2 things. It would detect the photo for people in it, and then it would suggest to you whether or not these faces are Linda based on its confidence that it might be that person. So that is something that AI face detection, how it works, and its recognition process. And it also is how we would interact with these images in people mode. So, people mode is that face detection process. It's a space for your images of people to be broadly managed and handled and allows you to sort of determine whether or not these AI face detections are accurate. It allows you to edit certain information based on that AI face detection. It's really, really useful tool. So those 2 processes work in the background. Number 1 is that it has these keywords, and number 2 is that it may or may not contain a face. If we're looking at these images, I can confidently say that none of these images, maybe with the exception of this one, are going to have any face data associated with them. Whereas all of them will have AI keywords associated with them. AI keywords are like an automated keywording function. So it's going to look at an image, and in this image, for example, one of the keywords that's going to pop up is tree, right? We have some form of tree here. And then it might also incorporate the keyword of sky. So it's going to be looking for your images for broadly identifiable elements and then just assigning those as AI keywords. Those keywords are assigned to your image, but they're separate from manual keywords that we will be adding. So we'll talk about that as well and how that separation works. So far we've done one thing, and that one thing is simply upload these images. In a workflow process, the next thing that I typically do in my workflow process is I like to rename my files. You'll notice that these are from a variety of stock. They're basically a variety of stock photography, and so all of them have naming conventions based on where I got these stock photos from. Your photos will have a camera like numbering function, and as a result of that, you may want to rename those because it's going to be like it's it's going to basically create unnecessary clutter. It also, we do search for images based on titling functions. So being able to name our files is also going to improve the literal search function that is upload that's at the very top of your manage mode here. This function right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to control A to select all of the images in my folder here, and I'm going to go and run a batch process called batch rename file. Batch rename enables me to rename all of these images at once based on some form of consistent naming function. And batch rename is really powerful. We're going to talk about it very briefly here, but there's a ton of information that you can add and remove from files. And batch rename has basically a system where it operates on this kind of hierarchical method. Where starting with a template that you're creating, and then it can search and replace for specific items in that titling function. It can change cases, insert specific text, or remove text. And then it can also remove spaces from your naming convention. So this is super powerful because, and you might want to do one or a couple of these functions, or even run all of these functions at the same time. Stripping your spaces, for example, it would take an image that already had existing spaces in the naming convention, and it would like remove that from it in the process. So typically, however, I use the function of the templating. And templating is very simple. It enables me to add a new title. And it also gives me the ability to add the number of images that are in a particular folder. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use the word landscape. I might actually use the word landscape and new. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a space, and I'm going to put in hash hash hash. And what hash 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 does is it will number these files from the beginning to the very last photo that's in the folder. And so what I have here is you can see that I have my the original name of the image, where I got the image. I got it on a stock photography website, and then what my new image is going to look like, or the name rather, the new image name. So it says landscape new, and then it has a number function, which is 001 in this case. And so this is a fast way for me to name all of these images in my folder really quickly. If I wanted to, it looks like I can use letters to replace the number in this case. So I go from AAA all the way down to ABX or whatever. I think that's a little bit more confusing than just using the number function, so I'm going to stick with that. After renaming, do we lose the original name? So that's a good question, and the answer is yes. You would lose that name. And the part of the reason why I'm just describing this workflow process, Marv, is because that name that's associated with my original file is something that I want to change because of the ambiguity of these original file names. Right here, I have, it looks like a first name, last name of the original photographer, as well as a upload code, and then the location, or where I got the file, which was unsplash.com. And so I'm changing this to something that's more consistent with my own workflow. So just note that, yes, this is a process that would be destructive fundamentally. I would also, let's say I want to remove or strip spaces. I could strip spaces in my image, and you can see here that landscape new 001 I could replace with, like, say, I could replace those spaces with a hyphen or an underscore or something like that in order to differentiate between those spaces in my image. And so you could see that, again, it's running this template, and then after it would be searching and replacing, making a case change. But in this case, it's just making a strip spaces change. And from here, I could rename these images, and it's going to go through the process of naming them all, and it'll tell me that this process is complete. Excuse me. Tom asked, the current name is displaying in alphabetical order. Before you rename, can you display in a date taken order? Actually, it's a good question. I believe we go to rename file. Do we have the ability to change the order? We do not. So if I change the order by name, well, it wouldn't work now, obviously, because I've named it. But if I go into a different folder, maybe I could change by group by, yeah. So this would be group by camera, group by author. So if we change the group first before we go to rename, will that work? Let's find out. So I'm just going to go into a different pictures folder, something with maybe still has those, not these ones. Let's see here. These ones. Oh, this one's not bad because they have different names. Okay. So if I go in and so they're currently grouped alphabetically. If we group them by, let's group them by rating. So they're grouped by rating now. It looks like I have fives and then unrated. So Austin's are located first. If I go to batch and rename files, will Austin appear first? He sure does. So it's going to operate, the order is going to operate predicated on a grouping. So if you change the groupings function, then that will also impact the order that you see these images in. So that's a really good question. I didn't know that. That's a pretty easy thing to figure out. So we did that. The answer to your question, then Tom is yes. Alan asked, don't forget you can add the star to add, therefore preserving the original file name. Oh, interesting. So you could do this. Let's do that. Let's go back to landscape, our second landscape folder, and I'll change the grouping to none. So it looks like what the other user is suggesting is you can use the star to insert the original file name into the template. So in this case, I don't know if this is going to work right now because we've already overwritten it. But what we could do is we could go. So here's our template name. I can do an underscore and a star. Yeah, so it's now changed. But in this case, if I go through the process of editing it the first time, I can add the original title prior to changing the template name with a little asterisk symbol here, and that'll preserve it within the structure. Again, I don't know necessarily why you'd want to do that because you're adding a whole string or of the original titling function to your new name. It's a lot, but it might be something you want to do. So consider that that's maybe an option as well. Okay, so we've gone through the process of adding our new titles to this image. And one of the things that we'd want to do sometimes is we also want to go through the process of converting these files as well. This might be most common if you're engaging with raw images. So what I would potentially want to do here is go through the process of converting these files into something that's a bit more wieldy than a raw image for every single one of our images. And so I would do the same process. And what I would do is I would do this by maybe creating a new folder. So I'm going to right click and click new and add a folder. And I'm going to add a folder of PNGs to this section here. And I'm going to select everything but the PNG folder. And I'm going to go to batch and convert file format. And I can do that in this function right here. And so I'm going to make the output file format different. I'm going to make it into a PNG file. And then I will choose my new specific folder that I want to place it in. And so I'm going to place it within my landscape 2 folder. I'm going to place it within the PNGs, and that replaces the destination there. And as a result of that, I can go through converting. I'm going to leave all of these file options the same. These don't matter to me, just the location as well as the format. So I'm going to go through the process of converting, and what it's going to do is, once again, converting file formats works like importing files, where this is a queued activity. So this means that I can continue to work through and essentially make other changes during this process, and these files will be converted in the background. And I can potentially see this occur by clicking here, and you can see as the files are converted, they're essentially added to this listing here. So I have my new files that I'm going to be creating. And again, this is sort of an example here because I don't have raw files per se, but if I wanted to actually go through the process of converting those raw files while I was editing and while I was going through the process of editing, this would be a way that I would do that. So something that I haven't mentioned yet, but basically you will have seen here, I'm going to close these two items. You'll have seen that I'm navigating to my files using this folder structure right here. And this folder structure represents exactly what my hard drive on my PC looks like. And you've noticed here that a lot of the interactions that I'm engaging with are in this pictures folder here, because this is typically where I put my image files here. But so I'm using the folder structure to find my images. And the way that I'm finding the folder itself is by, in this case, it's just listed alphabetically. I'm engaging with this landscape folder. Now, this is great. I can utilize this navigation tool to find my files. But one of the major benefits and the reason why you use a software like ACDSee is for something called cataloging. Now, what is cataloging? Cataloging is when we add information through a management process, which we're describing. When we add information to our files, that is, in this case, something that we add in ACDSee. And the word we typically use for this is metadata. When we add metadata to a file, that information is then searchable in ACDSee. So it gives me the ability to search for qualities and characteristics that I add to these images. Now, many of you have probably rated your images, or you've used tags or color labels on your images, keywords, categories, those sort of forms of information, which we're going to talk about a couple of them. But those tools, like in this case, if I were to hover over one of my landscape images in my file, you can see that there's these two icons up at the top. If I was to click my first image here, you can see that I can give my image a color label and I can give my image a rating. And as you can see, it has a label of yellow and a rating of 4. This information now provides me the ability to search for these qualities. And if I was to search for the quality of 4, or if I was to search for the quality of a yellow label, this image will come up. Now, this is really distinct from its location in the folder structure. And how can I illustrate this? If I navigate to catalog here up at the top, and I was to search for the image of 4, you can see that all my images pop up here that have this, in this case, this rating, right? This rating of 4. And you can see it looks like this one here, whereas the new file that I have here. There it is, landscape new. So it's located near the bottom here. But all of these images have a rating of 4, and some of them are from different folder locations. And so cataloging is going to bring up, in this case, different information than just the location, the raw location of it within a folder on my hard drive. Something that's really important to note when I'm searching for files with specific information is I'm not moving the location of them on the hard drive. I'm referencing a quality, and then ACDSee is collating all of those images into one space that has that quality, but these images are not being moved. Really, what I'm doing is I'm just searching for images that have that particular quality. So, something that I can see that helps, maybe can help me understand this is if I go to, let's see here. So that's a rating of 4. Let's see here. I want to be able to see the location of this on my hard drive. And to do that, I can show the path in File Explorer. So if I was to right click this image right here and show that path, you can see that it's going to bring it up on in Windows in this case, and it's going to locate the file. So this one is in my landscape, my pictures file, and my landscape 2 file, which is going to be, say, different than this. Let's find that image of this bird here. If I were to show in File Explorer, you can see that this is still located on my pictures file folder, but it's actually within a folder called animals. And as a result, what we can see and what we can sense here is that all of these images that are rated 4 have separate and different and distinct locations on my hard drive, but in ACDSee, they're collated in one place. And so, what we call this process of searching for images that have similar characteristics, we call this cataloging. So, we're cataloging our images based on certain qualities. I'm going to navigate back to, I'm going to use the folder hierarchy to navigate back to that original folder. So, I'd click on the folder itself. I click on pictures and landscape 2. And rather than searching for qualities, now I'm searching for a location. And so those two things are distinct. And that's worth noting in ACDSee because it's a huge feature of the hard drive. One of the things we'll also note is that while we were searching for these images based on these qualities, this rating of 4, my queued activity has completed. And I actually got a little pop-up notification dictating that to me. But if I was to navigate into PNGs here, you can see that all of these PNGs have this corresponding naming structure based on the images, the JPEGs that I had previously, as well as you can see that the top right-hand corner indicates that these images are a different file type than the ones that are in this folder. So again, like I mentioned, the workflow process was, hey, for most of you, you're just going to be uploading not from a disk in this case, but from a device. And that device is probably taking raw photos. And so the process of converting your files using that batch and conversion process is going to be pretty useful, especially if you want to be working with files that are a little bit smaller in file size. And so that's what we did. We created a PNG here from, our hypothetical raw files. Okay, so we've talked about navigating to files based on these criteria. And so maybe the thing to understand would be, I'm just going to open up snipping tool here just to showcase this really quickly. Oops, where did it go? There it is. Okay, so this section here is how we navigate to our files. So this section on the left-hand panel here is a navigation tool. So this folders, catalog, calendar, that sort of thing. This is how we navigate to files with particular information. Setting information is typically handled on the right-hand side here. So in this property panel, for example, this is where we add information to our files. We add metadata to our files that is going to be referenceable to us. Let's talk about that in a little bit more detail. But basically, the thing to keep in mind is that there's 3 broad forms of metadata that we add in ACDSee that pertains to what we're discussing here. When I open up the properties panel, which again is located on the right here, and I click on this bottom tab titled metadata, you can see that there are 3 pop-ups that occur on these images, or this rather 3 drop-downs. One is IPTC metadata, the other is EXIF metadata, and the third in the one we're going to be talking about extensively is ACDSee metadata. So just to clarify these things, again, you're probably already familiar with them, but for the purpose of those who are not, IPTC metadata refers to essentially copyright and author information in an image. This is information that it's probably not filled out on your image without you interacting with this image in some form of software that can either edit this or you interacting with your image's properties within Windows. But what this gives you the ability to do is add things like titling, your creator, the job title of the person who took it, in this case, intellectual property right information, the copyright, and the status, etc. These sort of broad information about you, the photographer, to your image. IPTC metadata is a universal metadata field, which means that this information, when added, is going to be visible to other people. And as a result of that, this is really relevant for professional photographers. This is sort of how they track their metadata in their image. So when you're sending this image to other people, for example, a client, this is going to be information that you're going to probably want to have filled out because that's your intellectual property that you're giving them the usage rights to. For those of you that are more home photographers, this is not going to be something you're probably going to have to worry about. This is more for professional photographers. EXIF, on the other hand, will be auto filled out based on the functions and setting of your camera when you take an image. So things like shutter speed and f-stop and ISO values, as well as the date that the image was taken and the time that that image was taken, all of this information is going to be pre-populated when you take the photo. So in this case, because I'm interacting with stock photography, these qualities have been removed from these images, but you will very rarely see when you're interacting with your images this information basically be blanked out. You will see this information in some ways because that's typically what cameras do. They populate this EXIF metadata, which is going to be very distinct from the IPTC, which is something that you'll likely have to fill out yourself, provided that you're a professional and you want to maintain this copyright information. The third quality is ACDSee metadata. And ACDSee metadata is the information that we're actually talking about. It's the metadata that we'd be adding to our images. And we've already added one such metadata, and that's the yellow label as well as the rating of 4. This information is sometimes listed here. As you can see, the rating is not listed, but the label is. And as we add keywords to this image, which we're approaching next, this information will also be filled out when we add keywords to this. ACDSee metadata is not visible to third parties unless they have ACDSee and can view this metadata, or you have embedded this metadata and have also embedded this metadata within this file. So typically speaking, ACDSee metadata is self-referential, meaning that it's going to be something that you reference, not something that other people reference. There are exceptions to this rule, but we're not talking about them today. For the most part, ACDSee metadata is for your own referencing, which is different from IPTC and EXIF, which would be universally viewable regardless of who has the file. Okay, so we've talked about importing. We've talked about renaming our files. We've talked about converting our files. We've talked about what navigation and cataloging looks like. And then we broadly discussed the properties panel, specifically the metadata panel. But where we actually have fun in ACDSee and where we add metadata is really from the organizing panel. So this organizing panel is the one that's listed right here. It's the second tab underneath properties. And this is where we add things like categories and keywords. So in this case, what we're going to be interacting with primarily is going to be manual keywords. But I just want to stop to mention that AI keywords provide us a search term that ACDSee pre-populates for you. So this is something that by default, when you import an image, is created in the process of uploading that image. As you can see here, this image, let's just view it a little bit more closely. This image, when I uploaded it, these AI keywords were populated for me. The keywords that it isolated was nature, first and foremost. And then under that, we have landscape and we have mountain, and it also lists sky and tree. So if I wanted to search using AI keywords, I could go to the catalog window here and I'll collapse categories and ratings and I'll open up AI keyword. And so what this is going to do is it's going to search for specific keywords that ACDSee has added based on some sort of quality. So why don't we look up mountain and see what pops up? So if I go to, let's see here, nature, and I go to landscape, and I go to mountain, when I search, you can see that if I open up my thumbnail view here, you can see that there's a couple images here that I've listed that have mountains in them that I would definitely consider a pretty accurate keyword. There's also some images here of this person, which is clearly just behind a rock and that sort of thing. So, it's an AI keyword. It's not going to be perfect all the time, but for the most part, it's a pretty accurate representation of what's referenced here. Let's see here. Is there one for island? There is not. Let's see if there's one for desert, for example. There's a couple beach photos, which recognizes that there's water in the background, etc. So already by importing your images, you already have keyword information. It's created for you with AI, but this is held separately from manual keywords. So if I want to add hyper accurate keywords that I've manually added because I am, in this case, the viewer and the person doing the cataloging, I don't even need to use AI keywords. AI keywords are one way of searching for an image, but I can also search with my regular keywords, the keywords that I've added myself. And so we'll talk about how what that looks like. But these are searchable, and we're going to come back to that. So I'm going to go back to this folder here, and we're going to talk about creating a keyword structure. So just as a reference, AI keywords already exist, and they are relatively useful for searching your images, provided that you've imported your images and have browsed to certain folders. These have been created for you. So I am going to add some nature keywords to this folder here. But the first thing that I'd like to do is maybe actually add or edit a current a keyword listing that I have. In ACDSee, I can add new keywords by just like right clicking on the keyword section and adding a new keyword. So it's pretty easy if I wanted to add a specific keyword. I can also right click on an existing field. So in this case, I clicked on animals, and I can add a new keyword that would be placed within that keywords as a sub keyword. But I can also just add brand new ones just by right clicking and adding. So if I wanted to add a new brand new keyword, I could add it as, vacation 2004, say. And I could add that by clicking OK. And as you can see, vacation in 2004 is its own separate keyword from all these other keywords that I have added, some of which have sub keywords. The ones that have sub keywords are pretty visible here because they have this little plus icon that exists to the left of the keyword itself. And the one that I'm most concerned here, because these are all nature photos, is the nature keyword. So the other thing that you can see is that some keywords that can be added, I can add them with a whole series of sub keywords. And so what I want to do here is in order to engage with all these images, I actually want to add like a whole new series of keywords. And to do that, I'm just going to click on this little drop down bar right here, and I'm going to do something called edit quick keywords, or I could create a new quick keyword set. And so what I would do is if I wanted to create from scratch, I'd click here, and then it would give me the ability to name this keyword as well as add a bunch of sub keywords that exist beneath it. Excuse me. What I'm going to do is I'm actually already have a nature keyword. I just want to add to it. So I'm going to click on edit quick keywords. And by doing so, I can navigate not to birds per se, but I can add, go down to, let's see, landscape here, and I can add some more landscape keywords. Note that in this case, I have nature, ocean, forest, urban, architecture, summer, winter, fall, spring, all sort of associated with, in this case, these landscape images. But I can actually add more fields here. So if I wanted to add, I have 3 rows here. So these are the rows, and then these are the columns. I could go in and I could add a couple more rows, and that gives me the ability to add more keywords to this listing. So why don't we do that? Let's add some more keywords to this listing. Yeah, you can, Gordon. I'll show you how to do that. Sorry, not rainfall, but rainforest. Let's add desert. Let's add Mediterranean. Let's add taiga. Let's add grasslands. I have these written down just to make this easier for me. Savanna. Let's add tundra. Let's add fresh water, and let's add marine. Okay. So those are some descriptive landscape keywords. And so what I could do is I could click OK. And when I click OK, I can save this landscape keyword set. There we go. And so if I was to click on this image, you can see that all of these keywords pop up here. And as you can see, my landscape set is right here. So all of those images are really quickly referenceable. So if I was to click on this image, for example, it's kind of just a temperate forest. So maybe I'd click on the forest keyword. And if I scroll up, you can see that forest has been added. Note that it's been added as a top level keyword, meaning that it's in this list. It's not a sub keyword here. If I wanted to add forest as a keyword within landscape, I could do that in a different way. And let's do that. I'll show you how to do that. I would go edit keywords here. And then I want this keyword of forest to appear beneath nature and landscape. And the way that I would do that is I would add, let's go to forest here, and let's add those words before it. So I'd add nature, and then I would add landscape. And so this places forest underneath the first keyword, which is nature, and under the second keyword, which is landscape. So this is creating a hierarchy where it's now the third in the list. And what I can do is I can take these words, nature and landscape, and I can place them before the first word in all my items here. And as a result, what's that's going to do, click OK and save. Now what that's going to do is if I was to add the word forest to this, it's going to add it beneath nature and landscape. Let's click on it to make sure. You can see that not only does it have the forest top level keyword, but it also has the keyword of forest within nature and landscape. All of these images are nature and landscape. So if I was to click on all of them at the same time and click on nature and landscape, you can see that those keywords have been added. So if I was to click on any one of these images, you can see that there's these two bright blue checkmark boxes next to both of those things. But it's really only this image that has the keyword of forest underneath of it. If I was to click on these two images, for example, well, they're clearly more urban settings. So I'm going to click on that. And you can see that urban has been checked here. So it has the top level keyword of nature. It has a sub level keyword of landscape. And then the third keyword that it has is urban, which is going to be different from this image, which has a sub keyword of forest. So if I was to control click on each of these, you can see that this keyword structure changes a little bit. So the blue keyword indicates that nature, right? But all three of these images that I've selected, the landscape image number 1, 3, and 4, all three of them have the keyword of nature. All three of them have the keyword of landscape. But the gray icons here indicate that one of these images in this grouping may have the keyword of urban. One of these images in our grouping or more may have the sub keyword of forest. So this is a really cool way for me to identify which keywords are universal or specific to the images that I'm dealing with. If I was to add in this one, this is kind of, I don't even know what to describe this as. Let's call it grasslands. This image has the keyword of nature, landscape, and grasslands. And now when I click on this one, and let's add Mediterranean to this one as well. Clearly taken in Greece or Rome or something like that, or Italy, I mean. Now when I click on these first 5 images in my listing, you can see that nature is listed, landscape is listed, and then it may contain forest, it may contain grassland, it may contain Mediterranean, and it may contain urban based on these. So this information tells us a lot about these files. Now, if we move back, say that we've sort of started the process of adding these keywords to our image. If I go back to the catalog window, and instead of opening up AI, for example, I go to the keyword section here, and we open up nature. If I was to click on nature as a top level keyword, well, we already know that all of these images are going to pop up. Let's just see it for now. So all of those images pop up plus a bunch of other images that I've already added the keyword of nature to. And you can see that these landscape images, let's see here, starting with this guy, are listed here as well. So all of my nature keywords exist here. Furthermore, if I click on landscape, all of these images are landscape images, and it looks like there's one extra landscape image that isn't contained within my previous folder. So it looks like one other image was tagged in that way. And then if I was to look at something like forest, for example, well, that image pops up. And then it looks like if I was to search for Mediterranean, that image pops up. Somebody asked earlier if I can select multiple keywords in the sense that I want to search for those things. If I wanted to search for images that were Mediterranean, but were also forest images, I could use this little chevron that appears next to my folder, my catalog structure here to bring up both of those images. So in this case, it's bringing up images that have a forest keyword as well as a Mediterranean keyword. The same could be the case for urban here, and now I'm cataloging based on 3 separate sub keywords. So this is really cool. This gives me the ability to interact with these images really directly, to see really valuable information, in this case, to search by specific keywords. And as I add keywords to these images, or to any images for the matter, if I was to look at this folder here, and let's add a bunch more urban keywords based on the content here. Looks like those are all urban images. That one is urban as well. So if I was to take these images that I've selected here, these various images, and then also add the urban keyword to them, when I go through the process of cataloging based on that quality, more are going to pop up. So even though I'm only interacting with this one landscape folder that I've imported, as I go through the process of adding this information to my file, these keywords to my file, even though they're separately located in one folder, when I do another photography session and I add more photos from a different location and go through the process of adding those keywords to those images as well, when I search for those qualities, all of them are going to come up. The other thing that's kind of cool too is I can combine keywords together. So in this case, I'm searching for urban keywords, right? But what if I was going to look for images? In this case, in this folder, let's add a couple urban images. Let's add some ratings. So these 2 first images, I'm going to give a rating of 5. And these 2 urban images, I'm going to give a rating of 2. So the rating in this case is arbitrary. I don't really care about the content, but you might. And the point is that I can search for my urban images, and you can see that it brings all of them together. These 2 images right here have a rating of 5, and these 2 images have a rating of 2. Well, what if I wanted to search for urban images, but I wanted to make sure that the rating is 5? So I'd search for urban here, and I'd put a chevron next to this 5 here, and you can see that it isolates those images. It removes the ones that have ratings less than 5 or no ratings at all, and just highlights my urban images that have a rating of 5. So from here, if I wanted to make some edits to these images, change them in some way, or further refine them, I have this like really, really inherently useful subdirectory of these particular criteria. So I have this landscape photos that are also nature photos that contain the sub keyword of urban. But in this case, I've also gone through the process and been like, I really like these particular urban photos. And it would be looking over my whole hard drive for images that are urban, in this case, and also have a keyword of 5. And this is referenceable. So if I was to go to a different landscape folder, for example, and let's say these 4 images, they all represent urban, images of urban. So I would go to nature, and I would go to landscape, and I would go to urban, say. And now they have ratings as well. You can see that these 2 images right here have a rating of 5, and these have a rating of 3. If I was going to go back to the urban section here, you can see that all of my urban images pop up, but now I have 2 different sets of images from 2 different folders that contain a rating of 5. So if I wanted to refine based on that, you can see that these images are going to be different from these images. And I can reference that by this. If I navigate to the File tab at the bottom of the Properties window, you can see exactly where these images are located in. These 2 images, as you can see, are located within my Landscape 2 folder, and these 2 images are just located within my regular Landscape folder. So I have 2 different locations on my hard drive, but by cataloging these images, I can bring them into one place, and I can see them with their various qualities. Okay, so we've talked about ratings. We've talked about labels. I can briefly mention just how we would tag an image. So unlike ratings or labels or keywords, tagging is a binary process by which we would tag an image or untag an image. So tagging might be really useful if you're currently editing an image, but you have to go away from your computer. You can search by tagged images or untagged images and work from there. Let's see here. When I've added these keywords, you'll notice that there's this little icon that appears in the bottom left-hand corner. And this icon really indicates to me that this image has received some form of metadata changes. And so when I leave ACDSee, when I click on close, typically speaking, I will be asked to embed this metadata. And when I embed this metadata, it will give me the opportunity to save it to the file. So I can take this information that I've added, in this case, the rating of 5 and the various sub keywords and top level keywords, and I can embed them within the file. I've talked about this extensively in the previous workshop, but this is used to reconstruct database information. For the most part, that's going to be too much for this workshop. It adds too many levels of complexity. But note that getting into the habit of embedding metadata within your file is a pretty good habit to get into. And so when you close your program, just note to embed it on close. And that'll be a really good habit to get into when you're adding and engaging with metadata. So we've also learned how to search via keywords, and we've added and talked about AI keywords a little bit. That kind of covers what I wanted to talk about in this workshop. Basically, we talked about importing, renaming, converting file formats, navigation, and cataloging, as well as like how to engage with these various properties, things like tagging, ratings, labels, keywords. There's more things like categories and stuff, but we don't have to get into that today. That's another thing to cover. But it works very similar to the way that keywords work in ACDSee. So I think what I'd like to do now is just answer any questions that I might have missed in the talking about this. So I'm just going to scroll up a little bit and see what people have been asking. Doug asks, I currently use an external utility to rename my files. Fair enough. Using the date taken metadata plus original name. So DSC N0001 becomes this listing. Can I do this with ACDSee? I believe so. Yeah, I think you can add all that information. If I go to rename file, I believe you can insert metadata within the template function. So if you wanted to, so you have the date taken, you would want to add the date taken, which I believe would be under IPTC, file properties. Let's see here. It would be under here somewhere. I believe it's under EXIF, right? Camera info? Not camera info. GPS image, date taken, date time, etc. And some form of original name. Well, you could keep the original name by, say, you could insert metadata at the beginning here. So I would insert it, and I would go under ACDSee metadata, and I would go to EXIF information and go to image and add date and time. And then after date and time, I would add a asterisk to make sure to insert the original file. And then after that asterisk, I might add some form of naming structure that I find useful after that. Plus these number to indicate what my new image might look like. So as you can see here, let's see here. So landscape 27 becomes, or sorry, landscape 28 here. This makes more sense. Has a date and time associated with it. So it's listing the date and time, and then it's has its original name, and then it has landscape 002. So this is a process by which you could do that in ACDSee. Really simple. Doesn't need to be too complicated here. All you're doing is adding ACDSee metadata, using the asterisk to indicate that you want the original file name in there, and then also adding your new file name. So Doug, the answer is yes. Great question. Doug says, can you search multiple keywords? We showcased that you can using the earlier tools. Let's see here. Peter asked, what about the between the keywords? So when I'm editing these keyword sets, this little line here, this allows me to edit them as a sub keyword. So it says here, for sub keywords use A vertical dash B vertical dash C. So instead of placing ocean as a top level keyword, I wanted to make sure that it falls under nature and landscape as a sub keyword. And the way that I would do that would be by adding these little vertical dashes that place it underneath nature and place it underneath landscape. So think of these little vertical dashes as like little arrow that points to the next area that I want it to go, the little area arrow. Similar to the way that it might look like would be one nature, and then it might look like, for as a sub keyword, it might look like landscape, and then as a sub keyword from that, it would look like something like this, ocean, if that makes sense to you, Peter. It looks something. Oops, I'm sending that to myself. Let me. Oh no, I sent it to everyone. There we go. So yeah, the top level keyword is nature, and then within that you have landscape, and within landscape you have ocean. If that makes sense. So the purpose of that vertical dash is to create that hierarchy. Let's see here. Okay. Bruno said keywords versus categories. Can talk about how to use each versus the other. Yeah, so this is like a workflow question that might have multiple answers depending on who you're talking to. I've typically approached categories as really broad ways of identifying images. And in fact, in this workshop, I used the keyword of nature. To be honest with you, I would have probably approached that as a category rather than a keyword. And my keyword would have been landscape image, excuse me, then all those sub keywords. But the tools work really similarly, and in many ways interact like pretty similar. There are some corner case scenarios where certain information with categories are selectable in certain ways. I want to say it's filtering. You can filter by categories, but you can't filter by keywords. So, in the off chance that you use the filter tool a lot, note that filter might matter because you can filter by the categories that you place on your images, but not the keywords. You can only filter by whether or not an image has no keywords or keywords. So that's a corner case scenario where categories is more useful than keywords, but it's so rare that that will matter to you. So I would treat categories like really, really, really top, really broad level keywords. Anyway, that would be my workflow, but you're going to hear a million other different versions of what the workflow should look like there. Just note that there's very little difference. And there might be a world where you never interact with categories at all. You would only interact with keywords or vice versa. So, good question. I don't really have a strong answer for you because they work very similar, but there is a corner case scenario where keywords is relevant in that filtering process. Peter asked, Doug, you can create it as a CSV file, save it as a text file, and then import that. That process works in reverse too. I'm sorry, I'm a bit lost on that, but it looks like you're responding to someone else. Doug says, thank you to Peter. So thank you, Peter, for commenting. Bruno as well, good one there. Peter said, going to a major birding trip soon, so creating my keyword list that way now. Have 550 bird species. Whoa! By major orders. That's amazing. So Peter, you created a CSV list and then referenced the CSV list. That's so cool. I guess that makes sense to do. It would be really quick and easy to do that in Excel rather than it would be maybe to go through manually. So I understand why you would go through that process. It's pretty cool though. Where's the birding trip? Amazing. Yeah, CSV then save as text then import. Yeah, totally. So what and I don't, to be clear, I don't know how to do this. Peter sounds like a more advanced user of ACDSee, but Peter's creating a Excel file, saving it as a CSV file, which is a text file in this case that he's then using to import to create this category listing because his category listing is really complicated and has like over 500 types of birds, which is very cool. Ray asked, hi, Adam. I missed the first 5 minutes of session due to zoo problems. Sorry about that. Do you have import photos to ACDSee for them to be managed as described in this workshop? We did talk about importing at the beginning. So if you want to watch the tutorial that I will be uploading to YouTube, if not today, a couple days from now, it will talk a little bit more about importing and sort of we started with that process. We talked a little bit about the activity manager as well and how we can import and do other things at the same time. Helen asked, Bent and I have used ACDSee since 2017 and we love it. Also, thank you for your workshops. You're welcome. So welcome. Thank you, Helen. Appreciate that. Bruno responds to Ray. Ray, no, keywords and other stuff are added either at import or during normal working session with your beloved software. Okay. Gord said, I tried searching two keywords with a rating of 5 and a person and a pet. The search gives me all 5s with the person and also all 5s with the pet, not 5s with the person and with the pet. Just to be clear, are you making sure to use these chevrons in your selection? The problem is if I just select on one or the other, it's going to swap between the two. But if I click on this little easy select icon, that gives me the ability to be really particular about this combination of searches. I'm not sure if that was your specific situation, Gord, but I just want to highlight that there's a difference between just clicking on an icon and clicking on the chevron that's next to the icon. Murray asked, how do I back up images plus catalog to an external hard drive? Is that an export? Backup images plus catalog an external hard drive. You're welcome, Doug. I appreciate it. Thank you, Marv. Backing up your images plus cataloging to an external hard drive. Well, I think on import, we actually had the ability to back up right then and there. So if I go to the backup process, I can click on this and it'll provide me ability to back up on import. But can we back up on export? Is there a way to export from, let's see here. So if I was to do batch and export this series of files, destination folder, file name, format, output size. Well, ultimately, exporting is backing up your files. You're taking what you have and placing it into a new folder. So I'm not sure if this quite answers your question, but you can go through the process after you've imported an image to back them up, or you can go through the process of backing them up right away once you import them. Backing up is really just making copies of a file. That's what it is. Plus catalog to an external hard drive. Yeah. So Bruno asks, so categories are broader, keywords are more on the content, color, weather, condition, etc. Again, this is totally up to you. I would say yes, that would be how I would approach them. Categories are these broad functions. Keywords are more specific to do with the content of what you're looking at. But again, this is like my workflow. It's a workflow suggestion. It's not the actual way that it works. You can have a different system. I'm suggesting it because it makes sense to me. Okay. I think, Adam, I don't think you mentioned the all any option when you select keywords. I don't know if I actually am familiar with what you mean. All any option. You mean on setting keywords or on searching keywords? Beside cog. Oh, I see. Yes. Do you mean when you search with this toolbar right here? Like the all any? Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, I'm sorry. Um, okay, we're talking about the search window. I see now. So, what Peter is oh not on catalog? Okay. um cataloging. Like using this function or keywords match all match any. Oh, I'm sorry. I see what you mean now. I apologize. I thought you were talking about the search function. Um yeah, you can switch there's the ability to match all or match any. So when someone was talking about utilizing multiple keywords in this case, so searching for if I was to search for any images that have a specific keyword, so nature in this case was one such example. um, Let me see here what it suggests. Cataloging. You have the ability to swap between these two things. To be honest with you, I haven't actually utilized this tool so much. So I'd have to like look at this in a little bit more depth to see the merit of this when using the searching function. Peter, what do you use this for when you swap between match all and match any? What's the corner case scenario or the user case scenario? Why you would want to swap between these two? Like what does it matter in your workflow? I guess is what I'm saying. Pardon me. Looks like if I was to look at nature in this case, this listing versus any, does it change the Not really. Very useful. Depends on how many sub keywords you use. Oh, I see. Match all, solve my issue. Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, so if you're searching for multiple sub keywords, let's see here. If I look for urban, for example, here, and I have match any versus match all, no change here, but my tree might not be complicated enough yet. The actual amount of keywords that I have is because I often go through the process of removing these keywords for simplicity's sake when I create these workshops. I might have had like an issue where I don't actually have enough content in order to display the differences between these two things. But uh, Gord is mentioning that Match All solved the issue that he was having in regards to the searching for multiple criteria. Gord, same understanding. The way that search seems to work is to provide for condition and or condition instead of showing files in response to both. Yeah, Match All is the answer. I will actually. Okay, this is a really good topic for a tutorial. Sorry, it's not a big enough thing that I can mention in a workshop, but I will do a tutorial on match all versus match any. And this also gives me the ability to familiarize with myself more. So I guess we'll thank Peter for the suggestion, and I will cover that in a tutorial. So at least I'm providing that information to people who don't understand the differences too. So this is really helpful to me. Also, I'm always learning new things about the software myself. So thank you, Peter. Okay, that kind of covers all I want to talk about today. If anyone has any other further questions, you can just reach out to me on Connect. But yeah, I really appreciate that everyone participating. Oh, Bruno mentioned that. So what Peter is referring to here is on the right of any catalog, search catalog. Looks like under keywords here, there's the ability to swap between match all and match any. And so upon applying a catalog search, this would be the, I guess, method by which that it would approach that search. So you can swap between those two things. And it sounds like that's most relevant when you're engaging with multiple search criteria or multiple cataloging criteria. Yeah, but it's on the cog dropdown. But anyway, I will do a tutorial on that. Just to familiarize myself with it some more, but also to present that information to some other people as well. So thanks for the suggestion. Okay, awesome. Really appreciate everybody. Thank you. That's sort of like an introductory method by which to sort of utilize and explore ACDSee on a workflow perspective. Like I said, we kind of talked about importing, renaming, converting file formats, navigating, and cataloging. Talked extensively about properties and specifically keywords. And yeah, then we answered some questions. So, okay, dope. Thanks, folks. I will see you in a couple weeks for when I schedule my next workshop. Appreciate it. I will see you next time.